The dragon high lords and their armies still dominate the land, but some free peoples still stand. Palanthas has been given respite with the cost of hundreds of Knights of Solamnia. Will help come? Will the dragon orbs be mastered? Will the goodly metallic dragons come to face their ancient enemy? Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman's Dragons of Spring Dawning. Dragons of Spring Dawning is the third and final installment of the Dragonlance Chronicles by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. It was released in 1985, and since it is the third book, this will contain spoilers for the first two, but I will link the reviews for those up above. I will also add that I believe there is a fourth book, Dragons of Summer Flame, that was written more than a decade later, and that is something I will probably read and review later. This is also something I have reviewed over on my blog, so if you want to read the review for Dragons of Spring Dawning, rather than listen to this, I will link that in the description. The story starts off with Barum, the mysterious man with the gem in his chest, that's gotten a little attention in the first two books, but is still largely a mystery. He reminds me some of Smeagol from The Lord of the Rings. As you can imagine, in this finale, we start getting lots of answers as secrets are uncovered and revealed. Part 1 takes us back to Tanis, Caramon, Raceland, Tika, Goldmoon, and Riverwind, and Flotsam on the Blood Sea of Istar. I was very impressed with how atmospheric it starts. It immersed me quickly in the story and faster and more deeply than the first two books did. Tanis makes his escape from the clutches of Kitiara, who is away in the west, having just slain Sturm Brightblade at the end of the Dragons of Winternight. Tanis struggles with his role of leadership since he feels he betrayed his friends by staying with Kitiara for a few days. And while I did not enjoy Tanis as much as I did in the first two books, Kitiara is a very interesting character. Her reveal was the biggest shock to me in Dragons of Winternight. The fact that she has a former lover, acquaintances, and brothers on the opposing side made for an interesting dynamic. Raceland has finally become a lot more enjoyable and interesting in this book. He was certainly getting there in book 2, but in this one, every time we had a chapter from his point of view, my eyes were glued to the page. A few chapters into part 1, we head back to the characters in the west. She started down a path I really loved near the end of book 2, but Laurana continues to shine in Dragons of Spring Dawning. She grows into her own and is regal and wise and loving way, but she is also burdened and scarred by her experiences and the responsibilities put on her. Though in some ways I was disappointed with her arc, it kinda did fizzle for me. I was overall more impressed with her character in this book. And a big plus is that Flint and Tass are back together, and their banter is so fun to read. It honestly may even be the best part of this book. Of new characters introduced in part 1, Astinus was my favorite. He's oddly immortal and is tasked to keep records of all events, or at least important ones, in history. I'd like to see more of him in stories that take place before or after this in other Dragonlance books. We also finally get to see Palanthas, which is the grandest city to be explored in the series, considering it survived the Cataclysm unlike Tarsus. It's actually thinking back on it now that I think one reason I really enjoyed the first book compared to the other ones is the experiences in the cities of Zaxarath and Pax Tharkus, which I found very awesome, very epic, very fun, and Palanthas gave us a little bit of that, which was nice and enjoyable. Overall, part 1 ends with things getting going. The forces against Takhisis finally rally some and seem to be able to stand somewhat of a chance. Part 2 has some going into danger and others escaping from it. Some of this didn't sit well with me, as it's passed off as love, but seems more like stupidity. This part tries to be more poetic, and those two things didn't work for me, because it seems like it tries, but it isn't succeeding. I can see why this could be popular with the younger audiences, but don't get me wrong, the progression of the war is finally coming to its climax, and I was excited to finish the story, though some things were just bogging it down. Part 3 brings us back to a character that I didn't discuss in my Dragons of Winternight video because he was thought dead by the end of Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I can happily say that Fizban, Dragonlance's Gandalf, does make an appearance in the third book, in his own hilarious fashion that kicks off part 3 to a great start. Then we get lots of development. Be prepared to be sad, to feel loss, but to feel joy. I'll honestly say that this story is pretty good, but I had a few things spoiled before reading, and that did dampen the fun. There are a few threads of adventure left at the end though, and I'm curious to follow them. That being said, this series did disappoint me some, and I think it's largely because I didn't find it lived up to the hype, which of course, overrating and underrating a book can make the level of enjoyment fluctuate drastically, at least for me. I generally try to go in with neutral feelings, but I'm not always successful. Oddly, the first book was my favorite, and I think I'm in the minority with that opinion. Also, the random disappearances of some characters, half of which you never see again, was a little frustrating. There are so many loose ends. though I'm glad we get little of characters like Gilthanas, the frustrated creep. That being said, Tanis also went from being one of my favorites in Book 1 to being one of my least favorites here. Tasselhoff is the best, though, whether he is with Flint or Fizban. All the threads left over, though, do segue into the other series in the Dragonlance setting, especially those written by Weis and Hickman, and I do plan on getting to those at some point, but I do think I need a little bit of a break from Dragonlance right now, though I'm not going to stop reading Weis and Hickman. I do want to explore more of their worlds. Also, if you like dragon orbs, they play almost no role in this book after a big setup in the second book, which was another disappointment. But I don't like talking about the things that disappointed me in the book, so I'm going to try to stop now. Though before anyone mentions it, I do realize that Tas shattering the dragon orb at that council at the end of the second book kind of does resolve the plot line there, but I was still a little disappointed we didn't get much from them in the third book. Also, the writing is unengaging and flat, but the story and humor make up for it. It really does. Most characters, even after the whole series of development, are still cliche though, and with the reluctant leader, brooding warrior, and so forth stereotypes. It's really interesting to me how moods work, because I feel like if I had just read this at a different time, maybe waited a little while longer, I would have enjoyed this tremendously. Okay, I'll really stop now. That's my review. What are some Dragonlance novels that are good sequels to the Dragonlance Chronicles, and what do they focus on? Give me your recommendations, because I will take them. I do want to read more Dragonlance, believe me. But anyways, this has been Liam from Liam's Lyceum. I will catch you next time. Thanks for stopping by.